The silence in the house was heavy, the kind of silence that has a physical weight to it. When Sarah opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed wasn't the sunlight streaming through the gaps in the heavy velvet curtains of our bedroom in Oak Haven, Connecticut. It was the cold. The side of the bed where I usually slept was crisp, the sheets pulled tight, devoid of any lingering warmth. She reached out a hand, expecting to find my shoulder, but her fingers only met the smooth, expensive cotton of an empty pillow. For a moment, she probably thought I was just downstairs making coffee. She probably expected to hear the distant clink of a spoon against a ceramic mug or the low hum of the morning news. But there was nothing. Just the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. A wedding gift from her parents that now sounded like a countdown. She sat up, her hair tousled, squinting at the dresser. That's when she saw it. A single white envelope propped up against her jewelry box. Her name was written on the front in my handwriting, precise, controlled, and utterly devoid of the warmth she'd grown accustomed to over the last 7 years. Before we go deeper into this story, take a second and hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and let us know where you're watching from. I'm curious to know how far these stories travel. Here at Family Secrets and Revenge, we believe the truth always finds its way to the light, no matter how deep you bury it. Sarah's heart must have skipped a beat as she reached for that paper. Or she didn't know yet that the man she thought she had fooled had been watching her for months. She didn't know that the life she had carefully curated was about to evaporate like mist in the morning sun. To understand why I left that note, you have to understand the man I used to be. I was a builder, not just of houses, but of a life. I spent my 30s pouring every ounce of my energy into a boutique architectural firm in downtown Boston. I did it for us. I did it so Sarah could have the garden she wanted, the luxury SUV, and the security she claimed was her highest priority. I grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood in Scranton, watching my father break his back for a pension that barely covered the heat. I promised myself I would never let my family feel that kind of precarity. When I met Sarah at a gallery opening in the North End, she seemed like the missing piece of the puzzle. She was elegant, cultured, and she laughed at my bad jokes. I thought we were the it couple. We were the ones people looked at dinner parties and whispered about with a mix of envy and admiration. But looking back, the cracks were there long before the dam broke. It started with the little things. The way she started locking her phone, the sudden late nights at the gallery where she worked, and the perfume that didn't smell like the Chanel I'd bought her for our anniversary. I'm a man of details. You have to be in my line of work. If a foundation is off by half an inch, the whole structure is compromised. I noticed the half-inch shifts in Sarah. I noticed the way her smile didn't reach her eyes when I came home. I noticed the way she'd flinch ever so slightly when I leaned in to kiss her. The day my world changed wasn't dramatic. There were no shouting matches or thrown plates. It was a Tuesday, a rainy, gray Tuesday in November. I had come home early because a site visit was canceled due to the weather. I expected to find Sarah at the gallery, but her car was in the driveway. I walked in quietly, not because I was suspicious, but because I didn't want to startle her. I heard her voice coming from the home office. She was laughing. It wasn't the polite social laugh she used with my colleagues. It was the deep, guttural laugh she used to reserve only for me. "I know Mark," she said. "He has no idea. He's so buried in his blueprints he wouldn't notice if the house was on fire." Mark Reynolds, my best friend from college. The man who stood next to me as my best man while I pledged my life to her. The air left my lungs. I stood in the hallway, frozen, as I heard her plan their next business trip to a cabin in Vermont. My cabin, the one I had built with my own hands as a sanctuary for us. They talked about money, my money. They talked about how Ethan wouldn't even care, as long as his bank accounts were full and his ego was fed. Most men would have stormed in. Most men would have kicked the door down and demanded an explanation. But I felt a strange, icy calm wash over me. In that moment, the Ethan who loved Sarah died. A new Ethan took his place. A man who understood that if the foundation was rotten, you don't try to repair it, you demolish it. Living with Sarah while knowing the truth was like walking through a minefield every single day. And I had to train my face to remain expressionless. to keep my pulse steady when she leaned in to kiss me before heading to the gallery. In reality, I knew she was meeting Mark at a mid-range hotel in Stamford, a place they thought was anonymous enough to hide their tracks. I spent my evenings in the basement, ostensibly working on high-priority architectural drafts, but the blueprints on my screen were a front. Hidden behind a firewall was the real project, a digital dossier titled Project Clearance. I had synced my home security system to my private laptop, bypassing the main hub. I watched the doorbell camera feeds on a loop. I saw Mark's black sedan idle at the end of the driveway, more times than I could count. The betrayal wasn't just physical, it was the casualness of it. I hired a private investigator named Miller. He was a retired detective from the NYPD who didn't take photos. He gathered a lifestyle audit. He followed them to that hotel in Stamford. He sat in the lobby with a newspaper, looking like any other traveler, while his team recorded them entering room 412. When he sent me the first batch of high-resolution photos, I felt a physical sickness in the pit of my stomach. There was Sarah wearing the sapphire necklace I'd given her for our 5th anniversary, laughing as Mark held the door open for her. They looked like a couple in a jewelry commercial, polished, happy, and utterly devoid of conscience. I realized then that Sarah didn't just want a new man. She wanted my life, my resources, and his company. She was trying to swap the lead actor in her play without changing the set or the script. Before we continue, can you take a second and share your thoughts so far on the story below? I read every single one. Have you ever had a moment where your entire reality shifted in a single sentence, like it did for me in that hallway? Tell me how you handled it in the comments. While they were busy at the hotel, I was busy at the bank. I began a series of complex but legal maneuvers. I had a separate business account for my firm that Sarah had no access to. I started shifting our excess savings into that account under the guise of capital reinvestment. I also looked into the joint investment fund Mark was managing for us. It was a $400,000 portfolio we'd started 4 years ago. Miller's financial forensic guy found the discrepancy within 48 hours. Mark wasn't just a bad friend, he was a mediocre criminal. Once he had been borrowing from the fund to cover his own gambling debts, moving numbers around on the monthly statements he sent us. Sarah didn't know. She thought Mark was a financial genius. She thought they were building a nest egg together using my initial capital. The irony was almost poetic. She was cheating on me with a man who was actively stealing from her future. I could have reported him then, but I needed them together. I needed the weight of their combined guilt to crush them. Before Mark Reynolds was the man sleeping with my wife, he was the guy who carried me home when I broke my leg during a sophomore hiking trip. We were brothers in every way that didn't involve blood, or so I thought. Sitting in my office, looking at the PI's photos of Mark and Sarah, I realized that Mark had always been a predator of opportunity. He didn't just want Sarah, he wanted my success. I remembered the way he looked at our house when we first bought it, not with pride for his friend, but with a calculating hunger. He had been playing the long game for years, waiting for a crack in the foundation. I realized then that their affair wasn't a sudden passion, it was a hostile takeover. He wasn't just taking my wife, he was trying to inherit the life I had built from scratch. The breaking point came in early March. Mark had convinced Sarah that they needed to protect a large chunk of my liquid assets by moving them into a private offshore trust to shield them from potential liabilities at my firm. It was a classic move. He was planning to take the money and run, likely leaving Sarah behind once he realized the gravy train was stopping. I let them do it. I watched via keystroke loggers as they drafted the transfer papers. I even signed a few authorized documents that Mark had forged, knowing my attorney was recording every digital footprint. I was handing them the rope they were going to use to hang themselves. Every night I would sit across from her at the dinner table, listening to her talk about her day at the gallery, while in my head I was counting down the hours until her world imploded. Our 7th anniversary fell right in the middle of this Cold War. I had to buy her a gift to keep up the appearance of the doting, oblivious husband. I went to a local jeweler and bought a gold bracelet, beautiful, expensive, and bugged with a high-end GPS tracker. When I gave it to her at dinner, she actually cried. "Ethan, you're so good to me," she whispered. I felt a surge of nausea so strong I had to grip the edge of the table. I wanted her to have the life she deserved, and her definition of what she deserved was about to meet mine in a head-on collision. The most painful discovery wasn't found in a bank statement or a hotel lobby. It was found in the Green Mountains. I had spent 2 summers in Vermont building a cedar A-frame with my own hands. I hauled the timber, I set the stones for the fireplace, and I polished the floors until they shone like glass. It was supposed to be our retreat. Miller tracked their GPS to the cabin on a weekend I was away at a conference. He sent me a video of them sitting on the deck I built, drinking the wine from my private cellar. They were sitting in the Adirondack chairs I had carved. That was the moment the last shred of mercy left my body. Well, you can take my money, and you can even take my wife, but you do not desecrate the things I built with my soul. I called my contact in Vermont and had the utilities remotely shut off for emergency repairs while they were still there. I wanted them to sit in the dark and feel the cold. I wanted them to realize that everything they enjoyed was a gift from me, a gift I was about to revoke. By month 3 of the charade, I was losing sleep. I had to take up early morning jogging just to have an excuse to be out of the house. I'd run until my lungs burned, trying to outpace the anger. Sarah started noticing I was distant. One night she cornered me in the kitchen. "Ethan, you've been so quiet lately. Is it the firm? Is everything okay with us?" She actually looked concerned. For a split second, I wondered if she was a sociopath. And how could she stand there smelling of the expensive dinner Mark had just bought her with my money and ask if we were okay? "I'm just tired, Sarah," I said, forced to smile, and kissed her forehead. I felt a jolt of revulsion at the touch, but I didn't let it show. I went to the bathroom and scrubbed my face until the skin was raw. Every time she touched me, I saw the hotel room photos. Every time she laughed, I heard her mocking me in the office. 2 nights before I left, we hosted a dinner party for our neighbors. I stood there grilling steaks, laughing at jokes, and pouring wine for people who would never see me again. I looked at Sarah, holding court at the center of the table, wearing the bugged gold bracelet. She looked so powerful, so in control. I wondered if she could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet. I wondered if she knew that every person at that table would receive a copy of her vacation photos the following morning. I had set up a scheduled email to go out to our entire social circle. It wasn't just about leaving, it was about an absolute social reset. Before we go deeper, I would love to hear your point of view. Tell me what part hit you the hardest in my story and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to act like everything was fine while your whole world was burning? Tell me your story below. I left at 3 a.m. The house was silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator. I walked into the bedroom one last time. Sarah was sleeping with a smile on her face, probably dreaming of the offshore account that would never exist. I placed the note on the dresser. My hand didn't shake. I felt as cold as the marble countertops in our kitchen. I walked out, the heavy oak door clicking shut for the last time. It was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. As I crossed the state line into New York, the sun began to peek over the horizon. I pulled over at a rest stop and checked my watch. 8:05 a.m. The bank was opening. The gears were turning. I had already transferred the title of the firm to my partner, David, and settled my debts. I was a ghost. Sarah woke up at 9 a.m. The house was unnervingly quiet. No coffee smell. No Ethan. She saw the envelope. The note read, "Sarah, I hope you slept well. By the time you read this, I will be long gone. I know about Mark. I know about the cabin. I know about the money. Don't bother calling or texting. This number is already deactivated. The lawyers will be in touch. Yes, enjoy the house while you can. The bank is expecting a payment I won't be making. You always said you wanted a life of excitement. Now you have it. Goodbye." As she processed those words, her phone likely started buzzing, not with messages of love, but with alerts from her bank. I had frozen the joint accounts, perfectly legal, as the primary funds were derived from my premarital inheritance. Mark Reynolds didn't realize that I had shared his embezzlement files with his firm's compliance officer at 8 a.m. that morning. By 9 a.m., the partners were reviewing the $150,000 hole in the accounts he managed. By 10 a.m., the police were waiting in the lobby. He didn't even have time to call Sarah. He was too busy trying to explain why my signature on the transfer documents didn't match the one on my driver's license. I didn't just want him away from my wife. I wanted him away from society. A man who steals from his best friend will steal from anyone. Back east, the scandal was the talk of the town. Sarah tried to play the victim, but Catherine, my lawyer, was prepared. When Sarah's friends started asking questions, anonymous leaks of the PI photos began to circulate. The spa retreat photos were particularly damaging. Within 2 weeks, the dinner invitations stopped coming. The gallery suggested she take an indefinite leave of absence. She had lost her husband, her home, her lover, and her status in one fell swoop. She was left in a massive house she couldn't afford, surrounded by the ghosts of a life she threw away for a man who was now in a prison cell. I arrived in the town of Silver Falls, Oregon, a week later. I became James here. I started taking small commissions, a cedar chest for a local wedding, a dining table for the bakery. The physical labor was therapeutic. The smell of sawdust replaced the sterile scent of the architectural firm. My hands grew calloused, and the dark circles under my eyes vanished. I realized that my previous life had been a gilded cage, and Sarah was just the person who held the key. Now the door was wide open. I met Clara at the local library. She was a school teacher with a laugh that sounded like music. When I eventually told her the truth, she didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me with respect. "It takes a lot of strength to build a new life," she said. "Every story has an ending, but not every ending is a tragedy. Some endings are just the necessary demolition required to build something stronger." If you're going through something similar, if you feel like the foundation of your life is crumbling, remember this. You are the architect. You get to decide what happens next. I don't hate Sarah anymore. Hate is an energy, and I refuse to give her any more of mine. I've realized that the greatest revenge isn't the note or the lawsuit. It's living a life that is so full and so happy that the person who hurt you becomes nothing more than a footnote in a much better story. Thank you for staying with me through this journey. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, Family Secrets and Revenge. We're dedicated to bringing you stories of truth, justice, and the complex reality of human relationships. What did you think of Ethan's choice? Was the note enough, or did he go too far? Let us know your overall thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and your support helps us keep telling these stories. Until next time,